everyone, this is Ellie Mae with Artesprix, and today I have a big project that we are going to work with the Artesprix sublimation paints, and we are going to be working with Artesprix's heat resistant transfer mask, which is awesome. And then we're going to be using the Artesprix Sequin Pillow Case blank. It is a 15 by 15 pillowcase that comes in 3 different styles. The styles are designated by the color of sequins and the different backings. So you have a silver with a white backing. You have a rose gold with this purple-ish backing. And then you have a black sequin with a black backing. You can choose which of those pillowcase blanks to order, and all of them have the white sublimation poly coating on it. So you're going to sublimate on this white side of your sequins. So we're going to work with that. I'm going to put those aside. I'm going to be using a 12 by 12 sheet of cardstock because this is a large blank. I'm going to be using that. You could also use copy paper or mixed media paper. And then we're going to be working with the Artesprix sublimation paints. Artesprix sublimation products are science. They are super cool. You do not need a sublimation printer to work with the Artesprix paints, markers, inks, or ink refills. You can use simple copy paper, cardstock, or mixed media paper. And when you add high heat and pressure, it turns into a gas and it transfers to your sublimation blank. You're also going to need the Artesprix heat tape, specialized heat tape for the high heat that you use when you do sublimate. And the most important part of the process is the Artesprix protective paper. This is siliconized protective paper that protects your work surfaces from the sublimation ink. As I mentioned before, it is science. So when heat and pressure are added to this, the ink turns into a gas and transfers to your sublimation blank. That means that any ink that transfers, if it is not protected, could transfer to your heat press. You want to make sure to protect both the top and the bottom of any heat source that you are using so you do not get sublimation ink on that. I'm also going to be just using a regular pencil. Pencil does not transfer to a sublimation blank if you need to trace your template. I have this on hand. I don't think I'll be using it today, but always good to have paintbrushes, scissors, and I just have a paint palette. Also a little thing with water here for putting my brushes into. Paper towels or wet wipes are always a good thing to have. And then I just have a silicone mat on my workspace to protect the workspace. Water will clean this up if you do get any paint anywhere, which I am always a messy painter. So let's go ahead. I'm going to be using this heat resist transfer mask to show you how you can make a super cool project. Let's take a look how I used my silhouette cutting machine to cut this heat resist transfer mask into a design. In the Silhouette Studio software, I set up my design. I used a guide mark to show the break from an 8.5 by 11 inch page. So I used 2 pieces of the Artesprix resist mask transfer. So I have a bottom section that just has one word, and I'm keeping this all on the cutting mat to keep it all together and in place. So the little blue line is just showing me where that break in the transfer is going to be. And then I placed that small piece on the bottom and added the second piece to the top of that. And I have my design. So I'm going to be able to transfer this using transfer tape all as one piece. So then I sent it. I used a vinyl glossy setting, blade depth 3 and force of 10. You're going to want to test cut for your particular machine, but this could be cut using any cutting machine. And then once it was completely cut, I did test it before unloading it just to make sure that it was going to weed properly. And then I'm going to take out all the little pieces of the insides of the letters and the excess around the individual pieces. So I'm going to, but I'm keeping everything still on my cutting mat so I can keep it all as one design. And then I'm going to apply the transfer tape to the entire thing. So then I'm just taking out the little pieces, the counters of your letters in the different sections, and I'm just carefully bending my mat to help release that. And then here's my transfer tape. I'm going to cut a sheet that's large enough for the entire design. And then carefully, while it's still on the cutting mat, I can just smooth that down over top of the entire design. It does take practice to work with transfer tape, but the more you do it, the more easier it gets. And then I'm just going to remove all of that from the cutting mat. Now here is my heat resist transfer mask. You can see that here. I've already applied some transfer tape to the top, so I'm going to go ahead and carefully remove the backing. So this is the backing of the transfer mask. It is now sticking to the transfer tape. This is how you can have a design that will be in multiple pieces. And I'm just going slow, and if any piece does not release easily, I just push that back down on the transfer tape. And you just want to go slow, and you can push that down if needed. So now we have our design that is ready to apply to our blank. So I'm going to set that aside here. Grab this. And here is our 15 by 15 blank. Let's give ourselves some space here. I'm going to go ahead and cut the tag off. And then just, you want to make sure that all of your sequins, first I'm going to have all my sequins going down so that it's easier for me to apply. And this one is the silver. So you just want to double check that all of those, your polyester coating is on the white side of this. So make sure all of your sequins are going in the correct direction. Because if I roll it this way, the silver or whatever color of the sequins is not your sublimation coating. So make sure that everything is completely flat so that it will transfer. Now the idea behind this transfer mask is that whatever is underneath this transfer where I have my letters is going to remain white. So I am just going to place this, and you could measure and place if you would like to. The other thing I can do is I can take this, fold it in half for my center point. That gives me a little bit better idea of the center of the design. And then I'm just going to eyeball this and place it down. You could measure if you would like, but usually I end up spending more time measuring, and then I still end up with it not right. Another thing to keep in mind when you have your pillow is sometimes the bottom of the pillow will be kind of squatty. So keep that in mind when you're placing your design. I'm just going to go ahead and put it in the center. I can, if I don't push it down, I'm going to grab a ruler here and just kind of double check. 2 3/4. That's a little over. If it gets stuck down, then you might not be able to move it again. Okay, that looks about even. I'm going to go with that. I'm going to take my hand and I'm going to smooth in the direction of the sequins because I do not want it to lift up. And then I'm going to grab a spatula and I'm going to smooth this down. You want a really good adhesion wherever this resist mask is, because we want the resist mask to stay onto the sublimation blank. And then I'm going to peel in the direction that the sequins are laying. So I'm going to peel from the top down and try not to lift up. So I'm going to roll this back because I don't want to disturb those sequins in the up direction. I want everything to stay as it is. So in this case, with this blank, direction is important. I'm just going to continue to do that very carefully. On some of these bottoms, I see it lifting just a little bit. I'm going to come back through in a second once I'm finished removing this transfer tape. I'm just going to smooth that down. This heat transfer resist mask is pretty darn cool if you get a good adhesion. So I can save this piece of transfer tape for another project later. Now I'm just going to carefully come in and I'm going to take my spatula. I'm just going to smooth that down very carefully. I'm not trying to move it at all. I just want to make sure that it's stuck. So now we have the first part of our project ready to go. This is my 12 by 12 sheet of cardstock that I'm going to be painting on top of. I designed it in the Silhouette Studio software with that 12 by 12 background. So we're going to see how this turns out. So I'm going to set this aside. And I'm going to try to keep it as flat as possible because I don't want those sequins to be disturbed. So I'm just going to carefully move that over. And then I have my 12 by 12 sheet of cardstock here. I am going to be using, let's try 2 different colors. So we have your Artesprix base colors. There are purple, pink, red, black, brown, orange, green, blue, and yellow. This also means that you can mix colors as well. And then you also have, let's get these out of my way. You also have, it says white. However, this is an acrylic lightning medium for sublimation paint. It is not white paint. If you want something to remain white, it needs to be covered like we are doing with this heat transfer resist mask. Then your object would remain white underneath there. This is used as a lightning medium. So we're going to use a purple as it comes out of the container, and then I'm going to add some white lightning medium to it, and we'll get a different color. So let's start with that. I'm just going to start with some paints here. I'm going to use 2 different sides. So I have my dark, then I have my light. Clean that off, and here is my dark brush. Then I'm going to take the lightning medium, and I'm just going to add some to that, and we'll see what color it turns out to be. Then I'm going to mix that up. And I'm actually going to move my cardstock away so I can bring this in here to work with. Remember, the colors of sublimation inks, when you see them on your copy paper, printer, whatever you are using, are not going to be your final colors. The final colors come into play. And I think I'm just going to take some of this, move it over here. Final colors come into play after the heat and pressure has been applied and is on your blank. So it's still, even though I added that lightning medium, it still looks about the same color. I'm just going to add a little bit more. We'll see what happens. It can be fun to just play around with it and see what you can create with that. Any excess paint I will take and I will paint onto a scrap piece of copy paper, mixed media paper, and I will save that for future projects. Great way to use up that paint, and you do not have to put it, you don't need to put it or waste it down your sink. Just go ahead and use it on a spare piece of paper. Now, I'm going to do just a brush stroke. That's all I'm going to do. I'm going to start with the lighter paint first, though. And kind of do all the way down to a dry brush. I do want to try to get as solid as I can in the middle of the page where my design would be. But I have two different paints here that I can use. So we'll get two different looks. That's at least my goal. We'll see what happens. One thing I love about working with these Artesprix is it's just, sometimes I don't have complete control over it, and that's okay. Usually it turns out even better than I had hoped. You do want to make sure to let your paint dry before you would add it to your blank. So we will have a little bit of dry time, but that's the great part about a recorded video is I can speed that up as we go too. So let's go ahead and get this finished off with the painting, and then we will come back for the next step. Now you don't want to have too much paint that it soaks through and makes a mess onto your cardstock. You can let it dry a little bit and then add additional layers if you need to, but I really want a solid coverage in the entire middle of this design. And then if I have any leftover excess paint, I'm going to take a scrap piece of my mixed media paper or copy paper, and I'm just going to use up that ink, and I can use that for a future project. Now, one thing to keep in mind when you are mixing paints is that it is very difficult to get the same color that you had. So I find it's better if I mix more than I might think I need than trying to match the paint. But the other part is that it gives it a unique look if it's not exactly the same color. So I have, this is my excess. I'm going to clean up my paint palette and my paint brushes. And here is my print. It will need to dry completely before I move on to the next step. And then we will create our sublimation sandwich using the Artesprix protective paper to make sure that our surface is protected very well, and using my larger press in order to press this. So I'm gonna let this have a little bit of dry time and we will come back. Okay, now once it is dry, we are going to get this ready to go onto the heat press. You want to make sure that it is very, very dry before you put this onto your blank so that the transfer will work properly. So I'm going to pull this back over in here. And then what we're going to do is make sure that everything is laying completely flat. And I'm actually going to, I think I'm going to tear the edges of this. So I'm just going to quickly tear this just so that it doesn't give me straight edges. And this is a complete, if you want to do it, you can. I just don't want the look of where the paper is. I want it to be more of a distressed look. So tearing this can help. Tearing the edges of your sublimation paper, or in this case, cardstock, because you do not need any special sublimation paper with Artesprix products. Save that more expensive paper to use with your sublimation printer. There is no need to use any special paper. I just have a sheet of cardstock here, but normally I use copy paper or mixed media paper. I use the mixed media paper when I do the paints, typically just because it can hold a little bit more moisture versus copy paper. But this is just going to give me a little bit more of a distressed look instead of being all perfect. Like this would be a straight edge here. Every one you do could be a little bit different. And then once I am done with this, which of course takes me longer on camera than in real life. Well, it is real life. And I put that aside. I don't want that to be in my design. I'm going to decide which way I want this. I think I'm just going to go with this, and I'm going to make sure that it covers my entire design completely. Then I'm going to take some Artesprix heat tape. I'm about to run out on this roll, but I am going to secure this. And I want to start at the top and work my way down the same way I did before, because I do not want the sequins to lift or shift. Just secure this very tightly. You do not want it to wiggle or get ghosting when you go to press. See, I'm at the end of that roll. So we'll go ahead, finish this up here. I'm gonna put one here and then grab my next roll. I just have it on a tape dispenser so that it's a little bit easier to do this one-handed on video. And we'll get this started. Then I'm going to grab my sublimation protective paper, and I'm going to cut a sheet that is large enough for the top and the bottom of my, to cover my space. Just going to give this a little bit more. Completely up to you how you want to do that, but I want to make sure that all of my print is going to be solid. And then when I go to set this on the heat press, I'm going to make sure that this is fully on my heat press surface. I do have a 15 by 15 heat press, so I am just going to use that. So I'm just going to use that, but I want to make sure that the entire thing is covered for my surface. In this case, I'm going to actually use 2 pieces to protect it completely because I have a very large design. And then for my heat press, this is layered, so it should not go through. However, I'm still going to protect my heat press. What I'm going to do, I'm going to shift this over here for just a second. I'm going to put a layer, take this to my heat press, put a layer of protective paper down on the bottom and another layer just to cover my 15 by 15 press. We'll see this in just a second, but I want to show you this sublimation sandwich. I'm going to put this on my press. The print is on the top platen. Then I'm going to cover this again to protect my top platen of my heat press. And now I can transfer this to the heat press. So let's jump over there. Now I'm going to take that sublimation sandwich and I'm going to set it onto the bottom platen on my heat press and then settle everything back down to make sure it's all covered, and 400 degrees for 60 seconds, and then we are good to go. Now these items are very hot when they come off of your heat press. This is pressed at the 400 degrees for 60 seconds, so very, very hot. Going to remove this. If you have any ink that has transferred from your sublimation paper or the copy paper, you want to make sure do not reuse these. That's the loudest part of the process. So now let's take a little sneak peek. Now I did put the Artesprix protective pad down on my workspace so I could protect this from the heat of the object. So I'm going to carefully lift this up. We're going to cross our fingers, see how this looks. Ooh, that sparkle. Okay. So there we have some more magic to do. So here is our sublimation paint. Now we're going to carefully go ahead and remove this mask. I'm going to get in under there and peel it away. And it will take me a little bit of time to do this, so I'm going to speed up the video and we will take a look at the end. But look at that. That heat transfer resist mask keeps your design. It resists the sublimation paint in that area wherever the design is. So I'm going to work at taking this off. Get in there. Since it is the sequin pillow, it's just a little bit, it's not a smooth surface, so it'll take just a little bit to remove that, and then we'll come back and take a final look. Now, once all of that is removed, we can finally reveal the entire design. So here it is. Here is the sequin sparkle pillow. There we have our design. Make sure to check out the links in the description below for additional information on the Artesprix sublimation products, as well as inspiration on the Artesprix blog with more ideas on how you can use the Artesprix sublimation blanks with the Artesprix sublimation products. Let us know if you have any questions. Thanks for joining us and have a great day.